hello again. I am Jessie Whittish with Kentucky Youth Advocates. It's good to see those of you who we've been seeing every week, and good to see those of you who are joining us for the very first time. And I know there are some new folks here. So thank you for joining us today. Thank you for spending your Wednesday mornings with us. I'm just going to do the reminders that I always do. We are recording today's forum, and we're going to share that later as a recording and also as a podcast. So we're going to, whatever medium you like to watch it in or listen to it in, you can access it in that way. So we ask that you stay muted, but if you have questions for the panelists, you're welcome to enter those in the chat. And the panelists, you can answer them if you want to, or if not, we can get answers to those later. But we encourage you to ask those. And I know in the questions that folks submitted in advance, there were some folks who had some really specific questions that please feel free to ask again, that I think some advice from our panelists might be helpful. So with that, I'm going to kick it to Terry Brooks, who is going to moderate for us today. And he's going to introduce you to the four wonderful folks that we have here on our panel. So Terry?
Well, Jessie, thank you so much. I know that several of you all had reached out ahead of the curve and asked me to open with a really kind of critical question, which is, Jessie, could you give us an update on your banner this week? Because I think it's like a especially good story. So I know many of you follow Jessie's weekly banner. So you want to do that to
Sure.
open,
Yeah.
Jessie?
Yes. This is
important
really
policy question.
This is really an important policy question. Yeah. So my son and my husband and I, we update this banner every week. My son is 4.5, and we got a new dog last week. And so this, her name is England, and this banner is England and her favorite things. So we got a squeaky ball, a bear, bone.
Great.
So yeah, it's for our newest
great.
family member.
Great. Well, listen, thanks for joining. That about wraps it up. No, so we are delighted to welcome today Dana Eckert, who is case manager with 7 counties. Dr. Debbie Mays, who is the education consultant with the Ohio Valley Education Consortia. Kristy Stiltner, who is mental health director with the Mountain Comprehensive Care. And Lori Wilson, who's executive director of the Carriage House Educational Services. So we really appreciate the 4 of you joining. I'm going to open with a very simple hypothesis. In the midst of COVID, it seems as if we have heard so much conversation around disproportional impact, and that is absolutely what we should be hearing about with all kinds of constituencies. I frankly hear very little conversation about the disproportionate impact on children with special needs. I just got to tell you, from a personal perspective, I worry a lot that those young people have been lost in more politicized headlines. And so I'm really looking forward to digging in today on this topic. I think it is one that is absolutely essential that Kentucky Youth Advocates and all of you as partners lift up, figure out what our priorities are, and really make a case for those young people. So I just need to open by saying I think that's a forgotten impact of COVID. And I'd love for you to tell me that I'm wrong, and you've been hearing a lot of conversation about it, but I haven't. So I know a little bit about our 4 guests and especially the organizations they serve, but I want to make sure everybody is up to speed. And my KYA colleagues know I'm terrible at intros because I feel like we're like using up all of our talk time, but it's really important that folks know who you guys are. So I'm going to ask if you can just jump in and give us a really brief synthesis of what it is you do and your organization. So Debbie, I know Ovec well, but other people may not. So what in the heck is Ovec, and what do you have to do with special needs children?
Right. Well, Ovec is it's an Ohio Valley Educational Cooperative, and we serve a region of districts. There are cooperatives across the state, and Ovec is just one of them. So we serve specific districts, and we cover district services in general, but there is a component of us that is exceptional children. And I am a special ed consultant there, and I do a lot of the compliance piece because of my background, because I did work at KDE at one point, but I also provide some other services and supports related to GAP and co-teaching and just those supports for those students with special needs in our districts. It's one of my favorite things to do, is to support them and actually get in there and help those teachers. So that's my job now. Background on me, I am a mom, and I've taught special ed for years. So this is these kids are my heart, and I really am happy to be here today.
Great. So Dana, I know like 7 counties and where you work changes its name frequently. So catch us up on what 7 counties is as we sit here today.
Okay. Well, we are still the same place. So yeah, 7 counties. Obviously, we serve 7 counties. We are a community mental health agency for those 7 counties, which are, this is a test, Bullitt, Shelby, Spencer, Jefferson, Henry, Trimble, Oldham. So we are the community mental health agency for those for that region, for those 7 counties. We've been around for 60 years, so it's unheard of for anybody in our counties probably not to have heard of 7 counties. So we have mental health services, we have substance abuse treatment programs, and then a very small division is the developmental disability division that I work in. So that's 7 counties. And then what I do, my little piece of the pie is I've been, my second round with 7 counties. I've been a social worker for 30 years, so I've been around the block a little bit. But my second round with 7 counties, I've been here about 9 years, and strictly working with one of the home and community-based waivers from the Medicaid program, which is Michelle P. waiver. And that is specifically geared for individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities. Okay. And supplying them support so that they may maintain their home instead of going into a residential. So
okay, great.
I've been a case manager for families, and my current role is a Michelle P. waiver evaluator, assessor. And then I'm also a parent of one of the participants of Michelle P. waiver. I have one of my 3 children has special needs. So.
Great, thank you.
Yes.
So Kristy, you bring a very different kind of perspective, and we're really happy to have you on this call. Tell us a little bit about your agency and what you do and yourself.
Well, I work with Mountain Comprehensive Care, and we are also a community mental health center. So we provide all of the outpatient services. We treat adults, children, substance use. We also have a department for developmental and intellectual disabilities. My specific role as mental health director is to supervise the outpatient clinics in our Big Sandy region, which is 6 clinics. And then we also have a healing program for victims of any type of trauma, and I supervise that program as well. That's adults and children. And then also our children's services program. And we have a new position. It's called the early childhood consultant that we have been working with to try to meet the needs of the younger kids. And I've been here 16 years. I've done a little bit of everything. And I have 8-year-old twins, so.
Great. And can you remind us, because one of our purposes, I think, on these calls are finding Commonwealth commonalities and also zip code uniquenesses. So remind us of your service region, just bring folks up to speed on what part of the Commonwealth y'all serve.
Right, we have expanded a lot. Our primary counties are the Big Sandy region, which is Pike, Floyd, Martin, McGoffin, Johnson. But we've also expanded into central and western Kentucky.
Okay.
I'm not exactly for sure what counties we're in there because I don't supervise those counties. But I know that we are in like Boyd, Carter,
Yeah.
Fayette, a lot of different counties.
So you have mountain regions and unmountain regions as part of your
Yeah.
mountain work. Okay.
Yeah.
And Lori, you bring a different kind of organizational presence to the table. So talk to us a little bit about what you do and who you are.
Sure, thank you. I'm Lori Wilson, and I'm the executive director at Carriage House. So we're a little bit unique in that we have a facility where we run several programs, but then we also do some home-based services. So we are licensed as a child care provider. We have an inclusive preschool program that's a 70% typical population, 30% children with disabilities. We also run 4 intensive ABA groups, classrooms throughout the day. We have behaviorists that are providing behavior support services in the home under Michelle P. waiver, and we also have developmental interventionists that they have been providing playgroup. So as of right now, we have reopened the child care facility. So on-campus services have resumed. First steps have not, and all of our Michelle P. waiver services are still being done through telehealth.
Okay, great. Thank you all so much. We're going to get into more targeted issues and ask you to talk about reflection on practices, opportunities, and challenges. But I want to open with a little larger question. Dana, unlike you, I am not a social worker, and I get accused of my KYA colleagues for not being able to talk social work. So I'm going to inject the word macro to impress them. From a macro perspective, talk about what do you think this has meant? What has COVID meant to a little boy or a little girl with special needs? I want to really invite all 4 of you to make it personal, not just fluffy. So what's it mean to be a little boy or a little girl with special needs during this rare and unprecedented time?
Well, it is very individualized, just like it is for all of us. So just because you have special needs doesn't mean that it is not, it's not going to affect you differently. It's certainly for a child also depends on how your family is dealing with that and how they can help you with that. With a child with an intellectual or developmental disability, they also have disadvantages. It could be that they are nonverbal or lack expressive skills. So they're not able to talk like all of us are today about how we're feeling, what this means, or the cognitive ability to understand what just happened to my world. Why is everything changed? A lot of children with special needs need structure, need that routine, rely on that to manage their emotions, to manage their day, manage their behavior. And right now there just isn't a whole lot of that. So it's very individualized. And I have seen kind of the great divide. I have seen the spectrum of how individuals are dealing, how our children are dealing with that. I can take it really personal and tell you that my child, who is very verbal, good or bad, and told me this is his utopia. He loves to stay home. He loves to not have to interact, and is thriving right now. So I've met many, individuals like that. So our fear as parents and as providers for these individuals are, how are we going to, when we ever get to come back together again or start, going back to our activities, how are we going to get them back involved? Because we have worked very hard, as anyone has, for all of the time that we've had with them to engage them. And now they've not had to do that. So that's going to be our challenge in re-entering whatever world we have.
Okay.
And then on the other end of what I'm seeing is there's a lot of crisis going on because we have children who need that structure, need that routine, need that activity, need all of that interaction and that input, sensory input to be capable. And they're not getting any of that, or they're getting very little of that. So we're seeing an increase in behavior. We're seeing a lot of exhausted caregivers, a lot of caregiver exhaustion. Plus, we're not seeing any of the providers able to come into the home to help. So that multiplies that. A lot of frustration on both ends. Then I say the last thing I'd like to say, so I can pass it over, because I'm a talker, you're gonna have to cut me off, many of our individuals, even though they love technology, they are not adapting to Zoom or FaceTime or Skype or all the other ways we're meeting right now. So their therapies have taken a big pause. And then when they're doing educational things, they need someone right there with them, or they're not engaging at all. And there's no provider for that. We've not ever needed something like that before. So we're seeing a lot of lack in that. And then I'm also just seeing, and probably many of you all have too, they didn't have the equipment to set up for this. They didn't have adaptable equipment. Some didn't have any type of computer or laptop or phone or internet or those types of things. So some just don't have the availability to do any of it. So we're just seeing that's what I'm seeing across the spectrum. It's very personal, so it's not necessarily a macro issue, but all of those things together would be. Okay.
So kind of a yin yang, and we're going to come back to that practice and transitioning. If you have the most macro, Lori, I think you have kind of a centered effort there with your agency. Can you respond to the same thing if you were to paint a landscape of what you're seeing, how it impacts kids on a daily, almost granular basis? You want to comment on that?
Yeah, absolutely. Some of it would definitely echo what Dana said. And, for us, our children range from 2 to 6. So as we went into this closure on March 20th, for us, it was about the child, but also the whole family with the parent, with the kids being so young. So we saw major regression in our kiddos, especially our more severe children, from communication to social skills to significantly increased self-injurious behavior. We had one kiddo who's nonverbal, and because of the change to daily routine, he started refusing his limited foods that he would eat, which resulted in seizures and a hospital stay. So it's very different, and it's a totally different stressor, I think, too, when you have young children. We immediately became very concerned for our parents' health as well as the safety of our kids. We know that our kids are at a higher risk for abuse in general. We know that stress in the household is already higher. So for us, not only were we trying to mediate and provide some supports for parents to continue a little bit of intervention, but we were also trying to be a place of reckoning a little bit for parents, so they could come to us and we could talk them through their concerns. And quite honestly, we worked really hard. I had my staff work to try to set eyes on the child and in the home environment at least 3 times a week through virtual means, just to do that check-in. But just major regression for these kiddos. We have kids that may be with us 30 plus hours a week, and so they're getting this intensive early intervention, and then all of a sudden it stops. So we were able to come back June 15th, and we have seen, we've been working through some of that, but I mean, it's certainly, this whole situation is going to have lasting effects for quite some time. It's going to take a while for us to get back. And I think our early childhood age range, parents have been ingrained that these are the important years. We have to get the early intervention. And so that brings a new stress to parents. And I mean, I sat with many parents on the phone while they cried of, we're losing words, we're losing this and that. And it's very sad. But at the same time, there's the whole safety risk for their kiddos. So, but it is very hard to engage preschool age children virtually, if not impossible. So it's more of parent training. We kind of try to take that model and try to empower and train our parents to become somewhat of therapists during that time. But it's definitely a challenge.
Yeah, no, that's great insight. So I'm wondering, from the mountains of Eastern Kentucky to the flatlands of Paducah, talk a little bit, Kristy, about what you're seeing.
Well, I agree with everything that they've been said. We're seeing the same thing. We've had an increase in the crisis calls for children. We've had more children at our crisis units. We also have, we've been trying to, we have what's called a high fidelity case management program, which is kind of amped up case management. And those case managers, which we only have 2 of those, but they have still been going out to see those kids. They've been, doing the social distancing, wearing masks, but those are our higher level of need children. So we've still been trying to see them as well. We run into the problem, of course, in the mountains that a lot of people do not have the ability to do telehealth. And we realized too that when we were trying to do telephone, that they were not answering because it was coming from, a number that they did not know. So we actually got phones for our clinicians. So it would show a local number, so they would pick up and talk when we talked. But then also a lot of our clients have the government phones, which have a selected amount of minutes on those phones per month. So sometimes we hear that, oh, everything's fine, we don't want to talk to you, so we don't take up those minutes. And as Lori said, it's impossible to engage those younger kids either on the phone or by telehealth. So we've been trying to, our early childhood consultant and my assistant put together like art kits. We ordered supplies because we have a lot of grant money that came in from COVID. So we ordered a lot of art supplies and did kits and put those together. And we've gone out and delivered those to a lot of the children just to give them something to do, because you would just be surprised at the children that don't have coloring books or books to read at home. So we tried to put kits together for some of our most severe kids and get those out. But yeah, it's definitely been very, very trying. And we do a lot of school-based services. So we have been in contact with our schools. We've sent schools information that they can have to send out to parents. And then they also, we have a contact that if a parent calls them and needs something or is having an issue, they will call us so that we can get in touch with that parent. And then some of the schools have opened up, they've asked our clinicians to come a couple of days a week and just sit at the school and let some kids come in and talk. And we've been doing that as well. And we also have our SITES programs, which are in the schools, and that's for the kids that really just have a lot of difficulty with mainstream classes. So they come into our SITES program during school and they get the educational as well as the therapeutic. And we have had those clinicians calling those students, trying to work out any issues that they may be having over while they're isolated. But and then I also agree, the kids that we have worked so hard to get to socialize and do things, they're in heaven. They don't have to come out and be in big crowds, and they don't have to go to school, which makes increases their anxiety. And those are the parents that are saying, oh, my child's so happy. But it's because they're in their comfort zone. And I do think when schools open back up and everything gets back going, we're going to have a hard time getting those kids back to feel comfortable, and for so that anxiety level will be a little lower and they'll be able to focus.
Okay, great. It's a great segue to Dr. Mays. So Debbie, I know historically, I think probably due to Dr. Moonaghan's commitment, Ovec has always been a leader in really working hard on delivering quality to kids with special needs. But in the best of times, that is a difficult proposition for schools. Given the current circumstances, it has to be tough. What are you seeing?
I agree with everything they've said. That this is an individualized issue. You know, we're looking at kids that are thriving. And we even have kids that, you know, thrive in this kind of a setting and may eventually do better in that kind of a setting. We have kids that aren't. We have kids that are struggling. You know, they don't necessarily have the food they need. Or the lodging, or their parents are unemployed at this point, you know, maybe their unemployment isn't coming through. So, you know, looking at it from a regional perspective, we're assisting those districts in trying to serve their needs, which are so vast. The things that I'm thinking, you know, we think about as we provide these services is how can we provide that access to that education for these kids? It looks so different. And sometimes, and one of the big issues we have right now is that those IEPs are not written necessarily in this way. Maybe some have had the foresight to put in some non-traditional instruction directions, but not always. And so we're looking at, you know, how do you look at those services in that IEP that child needs? And how do you address those needs? Can you use those services that are already there? Or do you have to be creative? And so we're assisting districts, you know, all the time now. I think I worked harder this summer than I have ever worked in a summer. And that's from home most of the time. So I think that, you know, we're looking at that social emotional, you know, addressing that piece when they come back, because we're all stressed, teachers, parents, kids. And I did a training yesterday and told the teachers it was on providing specially designed instruction and differentiation. And we talked a little bit about this different setting that we have. And I told them I felt for them, you know, because I know that we are all tired. This summer has not been one that we get to step back and reboot. Yeah. It has been one that we are still chugging away as hard as we can, trying to set up and figure out what the fall is going to look like. And when we don't have routine, I don't know about you guys, but when I don't know what's coming down the pike, I'm not confident, I'm not secure. It's one of those, it just rattles you, you know, and you have to step back. And, you know, if you have those coping strategies, you can step back and breathe and go, we're going to be fine. You know, we will figure this out. I keep saying productive struggle and growth mindset. You know, we have to, and I appreciate the governor because he has really looked at some of these laws that have been hampering and tried to adjust some things so that we can provide for those students, both social emotionally and to get them the instruction they need for that education and get access. So that's where we are.
Great. Well, I want to tag on to two things you said, productive struggles and the governor. So let's act like Andy Beshear has just called us, or if not, let's act like we're going to call him. And I want to give everybody a couple bites at this apple. I understand totally that some of the resolution to productive struggles are at a community level, at an agency level, at a nonprofit level, at an individual level. But if you're thinking big picture and you were going to talk to Andy Beshear and say, here are a couple things that the state could do, whether that's in KDE or the cabinet or the justice area, whatever the arena is, economics, internet access that was mentioned. I'm going to sort of do a rotation here and give you a couple bites at that apple. What either request or advice would you give to the governor if he wanted to take a step in Frankfort to definitively help children with special needs? Lori, let's just start with you. How's that for a little targeted question? What advice or what request do you have for Governor Beshear?
That's a hard one, Terry. Why did you choose me first? I'm just kidding. You know, I mean, it's hard. I mean, the first thing we wanted to do was come back and reopen, and we've been doing that now for several weeks. And you know, it's not easy. And I'm definitely a proponent of keeping regulations in terms of group size and some of the things that were initially set by the governor. I definitely think that needs to remain. It's just, it puts good controls on things. But, you know, I guess for our special needs population, I would ask that there's a consideration to look at programs for special needs children that may fall under child care, but are really, you know, providing an early intervention service. So like for us, I could see closing my preschool if childcare is closed, but the ABA groups that we run, if those could stay open, those are where our most severe children are receiving services. So, I mean, for us, from a child care standpoint, that would really be something that I think would be important to consider. Look at the difference for special needs kiddos, because even though they did have where you could apply to be an emergency facility where you could continue to provide services for first responders, the problem is that I didn't have enough of first responders for it to be financially sustainable for me to stay open to serve those families that have special needs kids. And so the parents were not able to go back to their work because they can't just take their child with special needs and drop them off at the YMCA because it's open during this time. So that was really hard. So I think that needs to be re-looked at, and we need to advocate for that should closure happen again.
Okay, great. I'm wondering, Debbie, you want to tag on from a K-12 perspective? What do you want the governor to do to support those youngsters?
Yeah, you know, I'm not sure that my thoughts go to the governor. It really goes higher than that, because we really have some stressors as far as the eligibility and evaluation piece right now. And
Are you talking federal?
Yeah.
Oh, talk about that. Go ahead, and we can talk to the president.
That's the first thing that came to mind when you said that. Is I don't know if Bashir can help me. But you know, right now that's where we're struggling, and we really, as the district's conversations are around how do we right now get those kids, you know, how do we do child find? How do we find them eligible, you know, and do that correct evaluation in this kind of a situation? Because what we're struggling with is we can do an evaluation, but there may be components that are not able to be completed safely. And then what do you do? You know, so it's a big puzzle, and I don't know that I have an answer to
I
what
appreciate
exactly
your
to
candor.
ask for.
I appreciate your candor. So Dana and Kristy, jump in. Whether you're talking at the federal or state level, what are some things that if you could wave a magic wand, you could be getting in the immediate changes or resources?
Well, through the entire process, I have said probably daily, many times a day, I am so glad I don't have to make big decisions. I'm not that person. I appreciate our governor and his compassion and his calm. I feel every time he talks, he's calm and thorough. I feel as best he can. I am just so glad I don't have to make any of those decisions. I probably would pick two pieces, and I don't have the answer to how to do that. I just know that I would love to have that magic wand if you have that laying around. With virtual learning looking like it's going to be a while, then I would say that I don't know how to do this. I don't know how we pick this, but for our individuals with special needs, they need to have the right equipment and be able to, I mean, they can't do it if they don't even have the possibility of having that opportunity. So we need to make sure it's adaptable for those individuals. We got nonverbal, we've got paralysis, we've got visually impaired, we've got hearing impaired, and then we have, behavioral issues that also, I'm not sure we can adapt to those, but we could certainly try to get some interventions that might work better. But definitely adapt. We need the technology to even try. So, and many families don't have that. So they relied on the schools, sent them to school that had all of those abilities, and then, come home and do what you can. So, and then the other piece that I feel is really lacking, especially if virtual school continues, is that many of our individuals either can't participate or need one-on-one with them to help them facilitate that. Keep them focused, using the equipment, those types of, and so of course we rely on the parent who's right there. Many of our parents are trying to work at home. Many of them have just had to say, I'm sorry, I can't work right now. And then that leaves them in stressors of the financial, so I don't know if that's I think it's probably both financial piece of that. And then also maybe compensating for the work that they're doing, because,
It's great.
it's not like my 17-year-old that can go have a fun day at school in your bedroom tonight, today, and pay attention. So those pieces are really lacking if we're going to see this a continual virtual world for a while for our individuals. And the therapy, they just, to be able to participate and get what they need, they have to have someone helping them do that.
Okay, thanks. So, Kristy, you already did a very adroit job of reminding many of us who don't think about access and do we have the right equipment, that's a big issue with the families and young people you serve. Are there other magic wand wishes that you think that either from Washington or Frankfurt would help out those boys and girls that you serve in the immediate?
Well, I think definitely with the educational piece, I mean, it's almost impossible for these children to learn at home. So we have to figure something out differently, some way to do that. I mean, if it's going to be an ongoing thing, I just feel like our children are really missing out educationally at this time. I mean, I know that, I'm educated and I was afraid that I wasn't going to pass the second grade because, I mean, it's very difficult. And a lot of the children that we serve just do not have the capability to do that, nor do they have the parent to sit there beside them that has the capability to do that. But the other thing that we're struggling with, because we have reopened our clinic to in-person appointments, if that's what best fits the client, but we're of course required to wear a mask. They wear a mask, we take temperatures, that kind of thing. And we are spending a fortune on masks because no one brings one. Even when they call to remind them, hey, you have your appointment tomorrow, please bring a mask. We're required to wear a mask. We've done, Facebook ads. We've done, we've got signs hanging everywhere that, you're now required to bring a mask. And, we're spending a fortune just in the PPE equipment that we need to be
so
able
you're talking about some very pragmatic help that how can you make sure those needed safeguards actually can happen? Okay.
Yeah, because we had to order, of course, the no-touch thermometers for all of our clinics. We had to order, I don't know, thousands of masks at this point, and we're still ordering. I got a big shipment in today. So that just, over time that you take a hit, especially when you're a nonprofit.
Yeah. So I want to, we always, first of all, your all's answers are so authentic and realistic that I really appreciate those. We also try to be aspirational as well as just read the headlines. So I'm wondering, because I heard some threads of this, and so that no one, not mentioning Lori specifically, feels picked on by me starting with them, I'm going to give you a general question and ask you to jump in. I heard some threads, and when we kind of heard this conversation in a similar forum we did with folks running residential facilities for kids and child welfare. that there was actually a quiet optimism that when we get through all of this, we're going to learn some practices that fundamentally changed that are going to help kids. That is not to mitigate or minimize the trauma and the crisis and the difficulties at hand, but it is hopefully to give everybody a little uplift. So I want to kind of, I'd like to close on a positive, which is as you're getting through this, or after we get through this, are there some threads of promising practices, changes in procedures, better ways of helping these young people out? Can you talk about that? Are you learning things, learning lessons, seeing potential implications? And again, I'm going to just ask the four of you to jump in, and then I'll try to traffic control it if I need to.
I'll jump in because
All right, Debbie.
I tend to be a positive. I like to look at the upside of things. I like to build bridges over our barriers, as we say. It's kind of the opposite of the Debbie Downer, I guess. I know we're learning new things. Right off the bat, we scrambled to try to figure out a way to get teachers on board and show them new ways of providing virtual instruction and providing supports. We all put our heads together, and that's one of the first things. So we are all learning new things and learning how to, fix our technology to work. And I think that's an opportunity to look at how we do things and to see if there are better ways. Because we always, sometimes we get busy, we get comfortable, and we have our old way of doing things. And that doesn't necessarily mean it's the best way of doing things. And I think too, because we are revising the way we do education, that we might find different things that work better than the typical way to educate these kids. And I don't know what they are because it can be so individualized, but we might find some different ways. And with the new way that the laws are going and there's different allowances for us, maybe that will lead to something that will just move us further along.
Okay. Thanks for being the antithesis of Debbie Downer. So what about you other three? Somebody want to jump in?
Yes, I'll talk. So I have an individual look in my household, but I've also, I have many opportunities that I've talked to other parents, and actually the one I was speaking to before this webinar, we had spoken and have sort of the same ideal that we have learned a lot because we are not, I won't say busy. I've been busier, I think, now than I agree with Debbie. I've been busier now than I have before, but we're all together. And, I'm not sending my children out of the house. So we're really all together, for better or for worse. And so I'm learning a lot that I didn't realize before. So in that, if you can take that and look at it in a global way, I guess, instead of being parent-child, but look at it as in the family dynamic or for that dynamic for that child, I've really learned what the triggers are for that anxiety and the fatigue. And that, for any parent of a special needs child, and of course they all have their own things, but so the fatigue and the anxiety for mine, I have learned a lot about that. We've also come together in a way that we didn't before because we didn't all have to race off and go to 500 things in all different directions. So we've actually had more family dinners, although they expected me to cook. That's a downer. For everyone, it's a downer. But and then we didn't have to race off. So we weren't eating over the sink and running off to the next thing. We actually sat and talked and engaged. So that was nice to come together as a family again. I know not everybody has that opportunity, but for us, that was a definite positive. We kind of reconnected again. We also, had to find new ways of activity, exercise. So we've been outside more. My child hates outside. I had to go, this is what outside is called. And that wetness on your head is called sweat when you're outside. I've had to, but we've also met, neighbors and people that I never saw before. So, so there's some community going on that often isn't talked about, because right now in our world, there's a lot of ugly and hate and that, but, I'm also seeing a lot of kindness and outreach and those types of things. So I definitely think there's definite positives there. I also, just to say this really quickly, I think there's things we can do to help our children at this time. And if you do have the capability of doing virtual, do it now during the summer to get them used to, again, but with fun. I've learned so much about aquatic because I've gone on to the Monterey Bay Aquarium, and oh my gosh, it's beautiful. Now I want to go in person someday. But, I've learned about they have these live cameras, and I get to see things, and, with my kids and those type of things. So there's virtual classes that are for free now. There's so many people coming together to offer free opportunities if you have the capability, once again, to get online, to have that technology. So use those, keep a schedule of preferred and non-preferred activities. Do those transitions that are going to still, have to happen, and that often cause anxiety and or behaviors and those types of things. Do that now and keep that going to try to help your situation when we go back to, once again, school virtually and or any type of schedule that way.
Okay, great, thanks. So Kristy and Lori, lift us up. What do you hope? What's your most optimistic view of how young people with special needs are going to be better off as we get through this and when we get through this?
Well, for us, I really think that this has been a time that we've empowered and built relationships with the parents. And so I think parents are going to be stronger advocates for their children. I think that they feel more empowered to actually see themselves as a means to therapy for their child. And once we worked through some of the initial shock and, the changes and the stressors, after the first month, when you realize this is going to be ongoing, it's like, okay, now what's the next step? So I definitely think we've built good relationships. When kids come to us, parents are usually in one of two places if they've been diagnosed with a special need. They're either still in denial, and maybe grieving the diagnosis, or they've got it and now they want everything right away to fix it. So, it did provide us with a good opportunity to help families and empower them. And I think that's the best thing that we've been able to see as an organization.
Okay, great. So Kristy, you're the culminating act here, culminating answer.
Well, I think I agree a lot with what Lori said. It has been, we've seen a lot of parents interact more with their children during this time because they don't have, someone else to send them to, or they don't have anywhere to go. And, we'll have parents call and they'll be like, I don't know what to do. And we can go over some activities with them, and those that have access to email, we've emailed them, the virtual things that are online that they can do with their kids. And we've also emailed them a lot of different activities that are, age appropriate for their children. But it also has helped us. We've became, I think, stronger with our community partners as well, because we're all very interactive now. And it's like, if like I have the lady that's over Head Start in one of our counties that contacts me, and she's like, a mom called and this is going on with her kid. Do you have any information, or what can I tell the mom? And I could send her some information. And I think that since we've gotten used to the virtual, it's not a big deal to just say, hey, can I call you up, or can we have a quick Zoom meeting and figure out what's going on? So I feel like our community partnerships have grown a little bit too during this time. And then we're seeing really great success with our doctors calling the kids and the clients, because transportation is an issue here in this area. So if the doctor calls you, they just think that that's the most amazing thing. So we've had a lot of success with that, and I'm hoping that that's something that we may be able to continue, at least with our prescribers. because it seems to be working really well, and you don't have people running out of medications, and you don't have kids that aren't getting their medications. And so I think that's helped us a lot.
Okay, great. Well, I'm not sure how you do a virtual standing O, but if we could, I would do that with Debbie, Dana, Kristy, and Lori. I loved that your answers were authentic, realistic, hopeful, and personal, and I really appreciate that. I want to take just a second, and Jesse, I'm trying to eyeball you to think about if we can post something for those. We have an unusually deep group of audience members, and looking at names, there are a lot of you who know a lot about this issue. What I would tell you is that we at KYA feel very much an ethical obligation to what we call a bias for action. So we don't want to just talk about this. What I would tell you is, so I'm going to compliment both Leader McConnell and Governor Beshear. So how's that for bipartisanship? Both of those offices have been very, very responsive when we have brought issues to them, either at the federal or the state level. So I want to respectfully invite and or challenge everyone on this call. Tag on to the ideas that you heard from Debbie and Dana and Kristy and Lori about that magic wand request, whether that's literally changing some federal issues or getting targeted resources to folks on the ground. Add on to that. And what I would say to you is that we at KYA would want to give you a commitment that we will look at those, we will follow up with you, we will look for common themes, and we will try to advance those. But we want to make sure that what we're trying to advance is real and resonates with folks like our four guests. So first of all, thanks for joining us. But secondly, respectfully, I don't want to let you off the hook. If you care about this issue, don't simply say, well, that was interesting. They said what I would have said, and then go on. We need to hear from you. And Jesse, I know you're going to close, so maybe you can think on the spot. And because I don't know how to do any of this technology stuff. Is there a way we can post something and just invite folks to respond and then let folks know what we've been doing? And with that, I'll say again, thanks to the panelists, and I'll kick it to you to conclude, Jesse.
All right, thank you, Terry. So I'm going to say every one of you is going to get a follow-up email with like the recording, the links to next week's forum. So I would just invite you to reply to that email if you have additional thoughts or ideas, or just want to say, hey, my personal experience sounds really similar to what I heard today, to echo that, and we can get that up and running, that running list that Terry was talking about, to share with the governor and share with Leader McConnell's office. And then we'll try and get something else up there, because I know that there are a lot of folks on this forum who kind of have networks of either parents or caregivers or somebody else that they work with. So we'll try and get something else simple online that you can share around with folks to get some feedback from others who weren't able to be on the forum today. So more to come on that. Be on the lookout in that follow-up email for that. So yeah, I will just echo Terry in saying thank you to Debbie and Dana and Kristy and Lori. This, when we started talking about doing a forum around kids with special needs and how to support them and their families, you just start to think about like, oh my gosh, all we see is this like array of concern or array of problems or something like that. And then hearing you all, I feel so much more like, okay, no, there are actionable items that we can take, that our decision makers can take, that there are actions that all along the spectrum of folks who care for kids, there are concrete things we can do for these kids and their families. And so hopefully that's something that everybody on the forum today takes to heart. So thank you all for your practical ideas and your positivity. Before we head back to what Debbie referred to as the productive struggle, and I'm just going to say I'm going to steal that phrase and start applying that to every part of my life. Before we head back to the productive struggle, everyone, just a quick preview of our next 2 forums. So the first, we're talking about magic wands. We're talking about those at the state level and at the federal level. Given that Congress is back in session, next week's forum, Wednesday the 29th, will focus on federal advocacy related primarily to additional COVID relief. So we'll be joined by Bruce Leslie, and Bruce is the president of First Focus for Children, and they're a national advocacy group for kids and families, so sort of a national version of what we do here at Kentucky Youth Advocates. And he's going to talk about the federal landscape related to Congress, kids, and families. And then we're also going to hear from some Kentucky voices to kind of Kentuckyize what that federal support would mean for Kentucky. The following week, we're actually going to have a special edition of our Advocate Virtual Forum. That's going to be on a Tuesday. It's going to focus on the child welfare system, and we're going to hear both some new research and some insight from state decision makers. So that's on like a special day and time, special subject. So more info about that special edition and also next week's forum around federal advocacy to come. We'll send a link to those RSVP forms in the follow-up email.
Yeah. Hey, Jesse.
Yeah.
Jesse, I wanted to just push that the August 4th, and again, I know Jesse will get this, but again, that's going to be 10 o'clock. And I just want to frame that, if you don't mind, Jesse, just for a second. For it. So we really have worked hard, and you're going to hear from the Chief Justice, the Lieutenant Governor, cabinet secretaries, and they're really going to be talking about COVID and child welfare, and then we're going to have on-the-ground folks. So we didn't want to throw your schedules off, but we felt like that if we could get the Chief Justice and Lieutenant Governor, if it's probably easier to ask you to change your schedule than theirs, and so that's the reason we're imposing on your flexibility. So next week, same time, same place, and it's really an important issue. And then that next week, I hope you didn't mind, Jesse, I just wanted to kind of lift it up right away to say that's the reason we're doing it, okay?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
All right, thanks everybody. Looking forward to seeing you next week, and look for an email from me soon.